Hey folks, welcome back. This is Joel, and we are actually in the middle of a very interesting series, which is the Silver Peaks SD-WAN solution. In the previous video, we kind of got an overview of the whole technology. We also looked at how to set up the lab. So if you have not checked out that video, you can go back and have a look at it. In this video, we'll actually configure the orchestrator and we'll bring up our first Edge Connect appliance. Okay, so let me share the topology, right? So this is the topology. I mean, our topology is influenced from the validated solution guide, right? So the Aruba has a validated solution guide which is publicly available for everyone, right? You can go to SD-WAN branch deploy section, and under that you have something called as deployment plan. So if you scroll down, you will see different types of topologies. The one which we are using is mostly this one, right? So we've got a couple of transports. We've got small branches like the one shown here. We also have a branch. I mean, the Chicago branch is basically the branch which is using subnet sharing, and this is the traditional redundancy branch, right? So we are using a similar topology for our experiments as well. Okay, so that being said, what we are going to do to begin with is, I'm using a orchestrator which is cloud hosted, but if you are going to be using an on-prem orchestrator, I think there is a deployment guide which on the internet which kind of talks a little bit about that. The process is very simple, right? All you have to do is bring up the orchestrator, make the orchestrator get an IP address using DHCP, and once it gets an IP address, right? So this again talks about that, right? You can install it on, you can install it on VMware, Hyper-V, Citrix, even KVM is supported, right? So once you install and once you run it, right, you will get an IP address, and once you get that IP address, once it picks up an IP address, you can just point your browser to that IP address and start configuring it. The only important configuration which is needed here is, I think there is a screen here which kind of shows that, right? So you're gonna get like a wizard, right? A guided workflow, and you can put in the IP address information, DHCP, DNS, and everything. The most important part is this license and registration, right? So remember, if you are using an orchestrator which is on-prem, then you will need to put the license and the account key information here in the second tab which you see here, and after that, your orchestrator will get licensed and it'll be operational, right? You can do everything with it. But if you are going to be using the cloud hosted orchestrator like me, in that case you don't have to do these extra steps, right? The orchestrator is already installed for you, it is already licensed, so you don't have to do all these extra steps, right? So yeah, I would say do pick the option which really works for you. For me, it is I have a cloud based orchestrator, so I don't have to worry about installing the orchestrator myself. Okay, cool. Okay, so the next step, right? So we're back on my topology, and let me show you the settings what I'm using, right? So I'm using so this is the host name, right? I'm using 2 CPUs, about 4 gig of RAM, and this is my QEMU version, QEMU architecture, and everything. I just wanted to flash this for you so that if your VM is, or if your Edge Connect is not coming up, you can use my settings to make it work. That being said, let me cancel this and let me start this guy, right? And once I start him, I can just click on him. I can look at all the logs, right? The console logs, which are going to show up. So this will take some time for it to kind of boot up. While this is happening, what we could do is we could go to our orchestrator, right? So this is my orchestrator. I've already loaded up the URL, right? So all we have to do is log in. So if you're using a cloud-based orchestrator like me, right, you will be given you have certain steps to kind of set up your login details and stuff, right? So you can again reach out to your Silver Peaks executives to help you with that. But that being said, in my case, all of that is set up. So I have a user called admin, and I'm gonna just log into that. You can also set up like multi-factor authentication, SSO based login, and all of that, right? All the fancy stuff. In my case, I don't really need all of that. I'm just doing a lab, right? So I'm just worried about getting a user interface up and running. That's it. This is not a production environment. This is a very simple, home lab of sort. Okay, perfect. So this is going to load. What we are going to do here is we are going to just go around we are just going to go around this orchestrator and try to do some minimal settings, right? And try to have a look at until our Edge Connect appliance comes up. Let's do some minimal configuration over here. For starters, right, remember we have 3 sites from our topology. We've got what are the 3 guys? So we've got London, Paris and Berlin, right? So let's try to create what we call as sites over here, right? So I'm going to go here on the left hand side, click on this plus button here, maybe not, okay, let me just say add group, right? And you see I get an option. I'm going to say site 1 dash I'm going to say London, right? Perfect. So that's a site. Let me again go to appliances and add a group, because this time I'm gonna add is it site 2? I think it is Paris if I'm not wrong, right? And the third guy is gonna be this is basically how you kind of compartmentalize, right? How you segment your network. So I'm gonna say site 3. Site 3 is gonna be what? It's gonna be, I think, Berlin if I'm not wrong, right? Let's just verify if that's right. So we have London, Paris and Berlin. Perfect. So we have 3 cities, and we have created sites for it, because finally when we discover our Edge Connect appliances, right, we can move it under that particular group and we can do certain group level configurations and stuff. It's just a way to kind of do your configurations in a much more streamlined and much more template kind of way, right? Perfect. So we have created, that's how you can create your groups. Next is let's look at interface, right? So again, if you see on the top, these are the various tabs you have. The monitoring tab is, again, just like, think of it as an NMS, right? Network management system. You have like various stats and what is healthy, what is not, how are your flows going through and all of that, right? Configuration, this is where we spend most of the time. Again, it is, you see it's divided as overlays, networking, templates and cloud services. Then we have some administration related stuff, right? Which is, as you see here, you can upgrade your appliances. So basically this is like doing some admin work on your appliances, right? You can reset some of the if you want to remove the appliance from your orchestrator, you can do that, and you have certain tools as well, right? So this is all related to a network admin and how they are going to manage the Edge Connect appliances. Finally, you have orchestrator. This all relates to the settings which are needed on the orchestrator, right? You want to change some, you want to add some users, like for example, if I click on user management, right, I will obviously get the various users which I have and things like that, right? So, and you can also do the licensing, right? You can also take care of your licensing, make sure that your licensing is all right and all of that, right? So this is again related to the orchestrator, specifically related to the orchestrator related settings. And then you have support, which is you can do RMA and stuff, which is, think of it as a tab where you can do where you can raise cases, you can you can upload certain files, right, packet captures and all of that for further troubleshooting and stuff. So yeah, that's how, and you have some reporting capabilities here as well. So that's how it is all divided, right? Very intuitive, nothing, you don't really need some very extravagant training to understand this. Very straightforward way of using this tool. Okay. So the next thing is we can look at the, let's look at the configuration, right? Here, if you see, there's something called as interface labels. So I want to show you the various, interface labels, which we can use, and you will understand the significance of this once we start configuring the Edge appliance, right? Right now we are doing some very minimal settings on the orchestrator, which will help us to speed up our process when we get the Edge Connect appliance up and running, right? So you can see these are the various type of labels, right? You can have WAN labels or LAN labels. I think it's very intuitive, right? WAN is basically towards your WAN, like your MPLS, your internet and all of that. The significance of this label is that this is how the orchestrator will decide when it has to create those IPsec tunnels, right? So that if an interface has a label as MPLS1, right, and if there is another appliance with the same label, right, there is another appliance with a transport with the same label, so orchestrator will intelligently create the IPsec tunnels between them, right? Because it understands that if it is MPLS1 on this side, if it is MPLS1 on the other side, they mostly might be connected, right? Then so as a result, it'll be able to create those, they'll be reachable, sorry, the word is reachable. So as a result, it'll create those MPLS tunnels, sorry, IPsec tunnels between them. You also see for LTE, it is trying to use hub and spoke type of a thing. So we could change that, and we could change it to any, right? So what this actually ends up is, right, so if you have like a hub and spoke setting over there, it would basically mean that irrespective, irrespective of the topology, right? So the Edge Connect appliance will only form tunnels with the hub, right? So if you want that kind of a setting, you can continue running. In my case, as we are starting with this lab, what I want to do is I want to start from scratch, and I want like a full mesh topology. When I say full mesh, I mean each of my Edge Connect appliance should form a full mesh IPsec tunnels with every other Edge Connect appliance in my network. So that's where I'm starting with. We will do hub and spoke at a later phase, but for now I want everything to be full mesh. So that's why I went and changed the LTE from hub and spoke to any, right? But you can technically do the same settings. That's a good thing about Silver Peak, right? You can do it per transport. You can decide if you want to use that transport as a hub and spoke, or you want to use it as a full mesh. Cool. So we can also go ahead and get a bit adventurous and add maybe a label here, right? We can add say a LAN label, right? We can call this maybe guest Wi-Fi, right? It's just a way of, you can add any number of labels, right? So we are just adding a LAN label over here, and we call it a guest Wi-Fi. You can add it guest LAN, whatever, right? So this is how simple it is to add labels, right? And finally, after adding this label, we will, when the Edge Connect appliance is up, right, we can select this labels, and we can we can define that, look, this particular label is on this interface on this Edge Connect appliance. That's the reason of why we are doing this. Cool. So that's about interface labels, right? The next thing is we can also look at templates. Templates are important as well. So some of the common settings, right, which you want to do, you can do using templates, right? So remember we spoke about BIOS and all of that. Those settings we do it separately. This is, as you see right from here, right? You can click on the show all button. At the top you can see there are different templates already. Right now there is one default template, but you see these are all the various settings which you can do using templates, right? Everything which is there on the right hand side. But for now what I'll do is if you want to just do any settings, all you have, like if you want to do VRRP, right, all you have to do is select this guy and drag and drop it here. But right now I don't want to do VRRP, so I'm gonna put it back, right? So these are probably the only settings which I want to do. So let's just do that, right? So if I go to date and time, I'm going to be using, sorry, did I go to, okay, NTP server, right? So let me find, I think we can use maybe that time dot, I think it is it nist.gov? I forgot. Let me just double check this and come back one sec. So yeah, I think we are right. It's time.nist.gov, and version should mostly be 4. So I think that's good. Do we need any other settings here? We could probably look at user management, right? So here we can put in so these are going to be the usernames and passwords which we'll be able to log into our devices, right? SSH into our Edge Connect appliances. So let's try, probably these are the local credentials of sort, right? So we can use a particular password. Let's make sure. Okay, so that's good. I'm not going to worry much about the monitor one, which I'm not going to use. So I think we are good with the admin password, right? Coming to DNS, this looks good, right? We have like the 2 DNS servers. Management services, you can see all of these are enabled, SSH, SNMP, NTP and all of that, perfect. Session management, maybe the auto logout, we could probably increase it, or I think we should be fine, I guess. Let me just check. Yeah, that looks good. So we have all of that, right? So once you have updated your template, so we are right now kind of working. So these are the templates, right? And all these templates are grouped into what we call as default template group. If you want, you can kind of like do a save as and save it with a different name. In my case, I'm just going to go and click the save button, right? Right now there are no appliances, so it basically tells that that we are not going to be pushing this on any of the devices, which is fine. All right, so let's go and check what's happened with our um, edge connect appliance, right? So let's grab this guy. There you go. So this is how the edge connect appliance has come up. Now let's go and look at the show IP DHCP binding. You can see it's picked up 1.5, right? By the way, 1.3 is basically my Windows management PC. So the appliance has picked up 1.5. Also note down the MAC address. It's 5000.004 and all zeros, right? So EVNG basically uses this for the management. This is Ethernet 0, right? On my, if you look at my topology, this is nothing but Ethernet 0, this guy, right? So once you know the MAC address of this, you can predict what is going to be the MAC address of E2, E3, E1 and E4, right? So I will show you how to predict it, right? But for now, you understand this. So all we need is we need to take this IP address, go on to our management PC, go to the browser, and let's see. So we gotta just put the, let's wait for it to come up. By the way, yeah, I think it's coming up. Yeah, there you go. So we'll just go here. Let's put HTTPS 1, yeah, not .6, we go for 1.5. Perfect. So that's fine. So we're gonna go to advanced, click on accept risk, a bunch of configurations here, right? So let's start with admin, right? So the username password is admin and admin. That's the default username password. Let's go to configurations, and here you have initial config wizard. Let's call this particular device with the host name of silverpeak-1. So let's change the host name silverpeak-1. Remember, we looked at the MAC address, that this is where it is going to be useful. So the MAC address here is, so you start with the management interface being right, this one, right? So all zeros, followed by we need to go to the MPLS, right? So this was the management interface, right? Ethernet 0 we already saw. Now if you look at the interface numbering in my EVNG, you see we know Ethernet 0. Where is Ethernet 1? It is over here, LTE, right? This is Ethernet 2, Ethernet 3. Let's do it in anti-clockwise, right? Let's do Ethernet 2 next. So Ethernet 2 will actually be connecting to my MPLS. So what I will need to do here, I will need to go to WAN 0. So I'm going to call my MPLS as WAN 0. So WAN 0, go here, change this to Ethernet 2. My internet is going to be WAN 1. So I'm going to change this to Ethernet 1. My LTE, right, is going to be, sorry, I think my bad. So this was supposed to be Ethernet 3. If you look at my diagram, if you look at this, this is Ethernet 3, right? So that's the MAC address of Ethernet 3. Whereas this guy, the LTE, right, the third transport is WAN 2, and that's going to be 1. And the last is the LAN interface is Ethernet 4, which is this guy. That's it. The next what we need to do is we need to go to our orchestrator, and under configuration you have something called cloud portal. So from here you can get your account name and account key. So I'm going to pause the video here, and I'm going to get these details, and once you get those details you have to paste it over here. That's it. So once you paste it there, you just need to reboot the machine. So let me just go and get those details. Hold on. All right, perfect. So you see I've put in the details. I think all the information is right. So all the MAC address is done. We have put a host name. We also have put the licensing information behind, right? And I'm going to say yes, reboot now, right? So this will take some time for the reboot to happen, maybe just a couple of minutes. I'm gonna pause the video, but before pausing, let's go here, right? So let's go to the orchestrator. You see there is a small green box which is starting to show up on the top right, right? So you can start clicking this guy, and you should see the host name, right? So here you go, silverpeak-1. You can see the host name is starting to show up here. It is currently not reachable because you know the machine is booting up. So I will pause the video here, and we will be back when this when the machine is completed the service, the silverpeak-1 you know, instance. Once it completes its reboot, it is going to come up, and the reachability will change to reachable. So we'll come back. I'm going to pause the video. All right, so looks like the machine is finally up. right? And you can see now it's no longer showing as unreachable, it's reachable, right? So we are good to go and do the next set of configurations on this one. The immediate action would be just to click on this guy and approve it, right? So I just clicked on it. Let's wait for a couple of seconds. Yeah, there you go. It's gonna give you an option. Do you want to upgrade this machine, right? So if you intend to do that, you can do that. In my case, I don't want to upgrade. I'm gonna skip it. But that's the general, workflow, right? Once the machine is discovered, or once the EdgeConnect appliance is discovered, it's gonna ask you, do you want to upgrade it to the latest release? If you really wanna, you can do that with a single click, right? All right, so now it's going to ask you to do certain, configurations on it, right? So remember, the only configuration we have on this appliance is the host name, and we just have the interface and the MAC address binding. That's it, nothing else. So here you go. So it's gonna ask you for the host name. The group is already selected for you. You can change the group if you want, but I think it is already selected the first group for me. Admin password, right? So here I can go and put the password for admin. I'm gonna change that, right? The location. So location, I'm gonna change this to London, because like we spoke, this one is actually in London. So I'm gonna remove the zip code. I'm gonna change this to maybe UK, right? That's it about here. Site name and all of that we can skip for now. So all of this is the information. We're gonna go next. So here, right? So here you can see there are three options. Either you can use it as a router, bridge, or a server. So I'm going to change it to router. And deployment profile. Deployment profile is, again, you can create your own deployment profiles. I'll show you that in the next video, but here we'll use a pre-built deployment profile, right? So deployment profile, think of it as basically they are nothing but settings, right, which will control all your interface related information, right? So here there are some default deployment profile. Now if you look at these, right, the one which really matches us is going to be MPLS, internet, and LTE branch, right? So if you look at our topology, this particular branch has all the three transports, right? So that's why I'm going to select a deployment profile which matches it, which is MPLS, internet, LTE branch. So once I select that, you can see all the interfaces have undergone a small change. And here now on the left hand side is where you configure your LAN interfaces, LAN side interfaces, and on the right hand side we do the WAN side. So for the LAN side, I'm going to click on so you can see here we have options to, we can add sub interfaces, right? In our topology, I think we don't have sub interfaces. I just have, I think I've configured only one subnet here, which is 10.99.10, but that doesn't mean that we can't add here just for testing purpose, right? So I'm going to click add, right? And actually let's add two of these. So I'm going to add a sub interface with VLAN 131 and the other one is 132, right? We can now add some IP addresses, right? So we can even change the labels here. So you see the label which we earlier created, the guest Wi-Fi is showing up here. Let's use maybe data for the untagged traffic, right? Let's use 131 maybe voice, right? And the last one let's use as guest Wi-Fi. So you see how I've taken one single LAN interface and I've kind of use sub interfaces to send three different types of traffic on it, right? That's something. This is again typical networking, right? Nothing very new over here. We can put IP addresses. I'm going to use 10.99.10. Maybe 100 for which interface. That's the IP address on the LAN interface of my EdgeConnect appliance, right? I'll have to put /24. So that's nothing but this subnet, right? Which you see over here. So similarly for this guy, I'm gonna just change maybe 10 to maybe 13. Maybe for the other one, we'll just change the 13 to maybe 14, right? So that's how you can put in the IP addresses for your LAN side. Now on the WAN side, let's come to the WAN side, right? Remember we put the labels, MPLS 1, Internet 1 and LTE, right? So you can see the labels are mapped here, WAN 0, WAN 1, WAN 2. Right? So let's put the IP addresses over here as well. So here this is going to be again 10.99. I think it is 101 if I'm not wrong. Let's look at our topology. It's 101, 102, 103, right? So let's use that 101.100/24. Let's copy that, let's paste, let's change this to 101 to 102, and for the LT it is going to be 103. Rest all looks good, fine here. I'll come to the right side. We can also define bandwidth. So I'll go with like 6 Mbps here. The reason why you need the bandwidth is because that will finally decide your licensing, right? Remember, in Silver Peak, the licensing is purely tied to the bandwidth which you want out of the box, right? So I'm going to use like about 6 Mbps per interface. So you can click on this total button here. It will just add all the inbound and outbound traffic, and it is going to give you 18 Mbps, right? So if you now this is where you can define the licensing. Now in my case, I have an educational license, so it just shows unlimited. But if you are really procuring licensing, right, from Silver Peak, then ideally in this case, you need 18 Mbps inbound, 18 Mbps outbound. So I think the smallest license which you can use for this appliance would be about 50 Mbps. So you have generally different segments. You have licensing for 50 Mbps, 100 Mbps, 150, and so on. So you have different of those. So you can select that. For me, in my case, I'm just going to select unlimited because it's just a lab, it's just a home lab. I'm not running this in any production network. I'm just using some demo education licenses for this. Okay. Boost is another metric, right? So boost, like I mentioned earlier, boost is mainly related to all of that TCP acceleration, network memory and stuff, right? So that is also sold in multiples of, I think, 100 Mbps. Now ideally you don't really need boost for the whole of traffic, right? You don't really need boost for 18 Mbps in this case, but I'm going to use it because I have unlimited boost. I can use any amount because I'm just practicing this as a home lab. But in your actual environment, what you need to do is it's again a detailed discussion. You need to kind of decide out of this 18 Mbps, how much amount of the traffic would really benefit from boost, right? You have to design in that way. Also, you might not even have 18 Mbps traffic at any point of time, right? So yeah, based on you need to look at the traffic patterns of your network. You need to understand out of the traffic patterns what is your maximum traffic at any point of time, and out of that maximum traffic you need to then subtract the traffic which you don't want to boost, and finally you'll end up with a number, that number which you can use as a boost, right? You can look it up a bit on the design guides, you'll understand that. But this is generally how you go about licensing and adding boost for your appliance. Okay, so I'm going to click next here. I think we missed one more thing, right? So here in the previous step, I think we forgot to put the next hop. So the next hops are going to be just .1s, right? So those are nothing but the router IPs for me. So I've already configured those. All I have to do here is let's just copy that. So this is going to be 10.99.100.1.1. Okay, my mistake. So ideally I think I should change this to 102. Sorry, I think looks like I put the IPs wrong. This is supposed to be 103.100. Okay, now I can just change this, Control C. I'm gonna paste it over here, and the last guy is gonna be copy that guy, and I'm gonna paste it over there. Okay, rest all is fine. I'm gonna go to the next tab. Okay, so here what do we do here? For now, loopback interfaces we are not going to configure. I'm going to configure this in a separate video and show you. I'm going to go next. This is where you need to do certain things, right? So again, remember I told you about how amazing Silver Peak is, where you can just configure the appliance, the basic addressing, and then it will start setting up the tunnels, right? The IPsec tunnels between the various appliances. But once the tunnels are set up, what's the next immediate step, right? You need routing. You need the overlay routes, right? The routes which are there behind each of the appliances. They need to be learned over these IPsec tunnels, right? So how do we go about that? Those settings are controlled here. We are basically telling use sd-wan fabric learned routes, right? So on this appliance, we are basically telling the appliance that you are good to learn the routes via the sd-wan fabric. So if there are some remote routes from another appliance, right, now this particular appliance will be ready to learn them, right? We can also check the other box option, which is automatically advertise the local LAN subnets, the subnets which I own, right, which is the service, the Silver Peak -1 appliance, right, whatever the subnets this guy owns, the local LAN subnets, we are telling the appliance you also start advertising those over the overlay, right, so that the other people will be able to reach you. So this is basically related to the settings regarding how you're going to learn the remote routes and how you're going to advertise those routes. We are just enabling that for now, right? There are more settings which we can do at a later point, but for now we are just doing some very minimal settings. I'm going to click on next. Now once you click on next, here you can see there are some BIOS, right? Remember we spoke of BIOS, business intent overlays. These are the default BIOS which are already created, right, on the orchestrator. So we are basically telling, yes, these are the 4 types of applications which we are going to see on this particular appliance. So enable all the settings for those BIOS on this particular appliance. We'll talk more about BIOS later, but you can uncheck it or check it at this point. At this point, I'm just going to keep everything default. I'm going to enable all of this. Remember the template group which we configured at the start of the video, we are enabling that also. All the settings which we did on that is going to be put on this box, and I'm going to click on apply. Right now you should see the progress here. You should start getting check boxes where it is going to tell you that look, we are actually doing the configuration and it is in progress. So there you go, that's happening, which is good. So let's wait for a couple of seconds with this. You can see a real-time progress, right, of the settings which is going in, which is great. Let's wait for a second. All right, perfect. As you see here, all the settings have gone in. I'm gonna close the box now, and you can see there are some alerts which are showing up, but that's fine. We will at this point, let's probably wait for a few minutes for the system to stabilize. I'll probably take a break and we'll be back. I'll pause the video here and we'll be back for maybe a couple more settings which we have to do before we wind this video. Alright, so I'm back now, and looks like the appliance is all stable. You can see there are no alerts against it, which means we can go ahead with the next step, which is let's right click here and click on the appliance manager, right? Remember the web GUI of the appliance which we used earlier from the management PC to basically put the whole account information. This is the exact same web UI, right? But now we can open that web UI or the application manager from the orchestrator itself, right? Earlier we were going to the management PC and opening from that, but now you can directly open it from here. Cool, so you can see this is how you see it. The main thing which we have to change here is we have to change the host name, and let's check if we'll have to change the IP address, because the IP address which this device obtained was via DHCP. We want to make it a static IP so that even after a reboot, right, if this device goes for a reboot, right, it should not change its IP address. So we'll just go here, change from DHCP, and instead of 1.5, let's make it 1.4. Okay, so I'm gonna hit the apply here. Right, so this will take some time to save this, right? Yeah, let me just come back once it is saved. Alright, so it has taken the new IP. Now we have an option here to save it. So I'm going to click the save button. So again, I think it went through. Sometimes it might tell you that it needs some more time to hit the save. In that case, you might have to wait for about a minute before you hit the reload for the save to go through. Okay. So next, so what we have done till now is we have now made the management IP as a static IP, so that even if the machine goes through a reboot, right, the IP address is going to stick. Let's actually now switch to the other tab, which is our orchestrator here, right? And on the orchestrator, what we can do is we can probably go down to business intent overlays, right? So we've spoken about BIOS, right, in the first video, but this is literally how it looks like, right? And just a quick overview here. You can see this. It looks like a table, but this part of the table, right, this section is concerning all the traffic which is internal traffic, like they mentioned here, SD-WAN traffic to internal subnets. That means it is this is basically concerning, these settings are concerning traffic that is internal to the organization, right? And whatever you have in this section is basically concerning the traffic which is pass through, which is local breakout, right, or backhaul and breakout, that kind of a traffic, basically traffic destined to the internet. This one is within the organization, so they have divided it accordingly. So what we can do now is there is also something which I want to show you here is you can click on any of these guys here, right, and you'll basically get a new box which opens up, right, and you see you can actually click on this pencil icon, right. So when you click on this, it will show you a certain thing. So what I really wanted to show you here is this is the so this is basically using IPSLA, right, and what is the use of this? So this is basically the IPSLA settings for the whole BIOS, right? And what's the use of is this? The use is basically you can define certain destinations on the internet, right? Like here, there is some Silver Peaks, endpoint. There is 8.8, which is a very prominent endpoint, right? You can also define your own endpoint, that is 11.1.111. That is in our topology, right? We have an end host. So you can define this, and what Silver Peak will do is it will continuously check if these destinations, I think at any one of the destination is reachable through a particular transport, right? If that if none of these destinations are reachable through a particular like as they mentioned here, right, if the tunnel fails to meet the IPSLA rule, right, if it is not able to reach, then that particular tunnel and ultimately that particular underlay, right, will be disabled or removed from the service, so that you no longer send traffic. So this is like a very it's again nothing very new, right? This is not like next level technology. IPSLA has been there for ages. What they are doing is they're just using IPSLA here to continuously monitor. They'll be sending ping or HTTP probes to these endpoints, and by doing that, right, we are continuously seeing if if it is failing to reach these endpoints, right, and those tunnels and subsequently those transports will be terminated. So I just wanted to show you that here, because you can keep on adding any other endpoints which you think are going to, because normally what happens is if you just use only 8.8, right, 8.8 is a Google's DNS server, and there's always a possibility that they might be putting some kind of a clamp down on the number of ICMP requests you send to this, because it's a public server, right, everyone is pinging it. So at some point, there might be some kind of a clamp down. They might put a threshold, and you might not get the ping reply back, but technically your transport is working fine. It's just the issue with the endpoint. So that's why always make sure you add more than one over here, so that even if one of the IP is you're not able to ping it, Silver Peak can go and actually check against some other IPs. So I'm going to close this, right, and close this as well. So that's this, but this is how the BIOS look like, right? We will in the future videos we'll try to modify this and play around with this, but you can see these are the 4 types of traffic classes: real-time, critical apps, bulk apps, and overlay, and default, the rest of the traffic, right? In each of these classes you can define how you want to match the traffic, what kind of a topology you want for that, who is going to be a primary transport, who is going to be a backup transports, and even here, right, for each of the traffic you can define if you want to locally break out or you want to backhaul and break out, right? You can see 2 options over here. So this is pretty straightforward, right? Here also you have what is the primary interfaces and what is the backup interfaces. Okay, so we'll talk more about BIOS later, but for now I think to wind this up, what we will do is we'll just check if our if all of this is working fine. What should happen is, so right now what has happened is this default setting of BIOS have been pushed onto our appliance, correct? We saw that earlier. So in that case, technically our appliance should have reachability to what? Should have reachability to the internet, or in our case, if you look at my topology, right, ideally, we can consider that this particular host is the internet for us, right? Technically I have access to internet as well, 8.8 and all of that, but for our understanding, we can just try to ping this IP 11.1.111 from where? From the appliance, right? So how to do that? We can do it in different ways, but we can actually go back to this appliance manager, right? And from here, you have an option called maintenance. In maintenance, you have an option called ping and trace route, right? So let's wait for that to open. Okay, there you go. And what's the IP we want to ping? We want to ping 11.1.11, right? Perfect. And now here you can define what options, right? So if you look at our topology, we have we have basically the LAN side of this, right? So remember, we have put an IP address on E4 interface. We have put that earlier, right? It is 10.99.10.100 is what we have put. So we'll try to ping because that will help us understand if the traffic is really passing through our appliance, right? So we'll put a flag here. I think it is -I and 10.99 I think 10.100. So that's the flag, right? With that flag in place, we can hit the start button, and there you go, ping is working, right? Perfect. So it means that traffic is really flowing through our device. So we can hit the stop if you want here, right? So there you go, it stopped. You can see there is no loss, traffic is flowing through. We can also do a trace route if you need. You can switch this to trace route. The IP will remain the same, but the flag will change here. So we can do -S 10 dot source, right? 10.99.10.100, right? So now by doing this trace route, we can understand which transport is the traffic really using. Is it going through MPLS? Is it using internet? Or is it going through LTE, right? So let's start this. There you go, right? So we can see 10.99.102.1, and if you look at my topology here, 102.1 is this one, right? So it picked the internet transport, and that is accepted, right? The reason is because if you look at my bio, sorry, let's come here. Where is the bio? It's here, right? So if you switch to my bio, I believe what is happening right now is the ping is basically matching this traffic, right? The default traffic, and you can see here we are trying to hit the how are we differentiating between these two traffics? It is basically based on the subnets. If you click on this pencil icon, you can see here these are the subnets which is categorized as internal traffic. You see the 10 network, 172, 192, and some multicast stuff, but this is basically private pools, right? Private subnets. So since we tried to ping what 10 dot we tried to ping 11.1.1.11, which is not part of this, right? So as a result, Silver Peak realized that, or that Appliance realized that it doesn't have to use these settings, it has to use these settings. And in this settings, you see the it basically had to use it ideally so here you can see the priority is for backhaul, but if you see in our topology, we have just brought up only one appliance, right? We have just brought up only one appliance, so we don't have a hub currently, right? So there is no way to backhaul it to a hub. So as a result, the next priority got activated, which is breakout, and as a result, what happened, the traffic just broke out from this local internet transport, right? And the traffic basically went to and why did it pick internet here? Because you see the primary interfaces is internet, right? iNet2 is not that for us, so it picked iNet1, and that's why when we did the trace route, you can clearly see here it went to the internet interface, and from there it went to the endpoint. Perfect. So yeah, so we have, I think, covered everything which we wanted to do. Just to recap, what we did was we started by bringing up some of the settings on our orchestrator, which is a cloud-based orchestrator which we are using. Then we triggered the sd-wan, right, which is the first appliance. We just started it, booted it up, and waited for it to pick an IP address from a DHCP. Then we went into the management interface, right, using the web browser, and did some minimal settings, which is putting the license information, account information, and from there onwards the appliance went and started talking to the orchestrator, right? So once it started talking to the orchestrator, we started configuring the appliance using deployment profile and all of that using the orchestrator, and finally we validated everything works by pinging from the LAN interface towards the internet. All right, perfect. Thanks a lot for watching, and do come back for more videos. Have a good day. Bye.